The reason why I decided to make this video is because I know that many people are scared to create their own reverb presets. They're scared of programming a reverb. They don't know where to begin, they don't know where to start, they don't know what each control does, and in the end, they resort to using presets. And there's nothing wrong with presets. Presets can be a great starting point to get you going, and they can be a source of inspiration, because in my opinion, reverbs, you can treat them like synths. They're an extra layer of sound that you add on top of any sound source. But I hope that after watching this video, you will be a reverb ninja and you will be able to create your own reverb presets. You'll be able to program your reverbs. So this is going to be a very simple guide on how to program reverbs. I'm going to try and make this as short as humanly possible, because this could be an entire course, to be honest with you. I could have at least 5 hours worth of workshop, or even 10-12 hours talking about reverbs and how to program them for every different scenario. So let's get started, let's not waste any time. One of the things that I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to use several reverbs. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to show you that if you know the basics, if you know the fundamentals, it doesn't matter what reverb you're using. You can use 15 different reverb plugins and they all follow the same principles, especially when it comes to algorithmic reverbs. So I'm going to focus more on algorithmic reverbs in this case, and just for simplicity, I'm going to use all the reverbs in insert mode, so I'm not going to use them as sends, so that things are a little bit more simple and you can follow along. So let's start with the reverb basics, and I'm going to start with a very simple reverb that's included in Cubase. It's called Roomworks SE, and I chose this reverb because it's very simple. It has very few controls and we can get started really quickly. So let's play this vocal, and I'm going to have the mix all the way to 0. So we're going to listen to this vocal dry, and by turning up the mix, I'm going to start introducing the reverb.
A new day, never wanted that.
And now let's start talking about the very first parameters that you will encounter in pretty much every algorithmic reverb. And this is, number 1, the reverb time. In very simple words, reverb time is how long the reverb tail is going to be. So is it going to be super long? That means we're in a cathedral. It means we're in a cave. Is it super short? That means we are in a small room, in a tiled room. Let's have a listen, and I'm going to play with this.
A new day, never wanted that. A new day, never wanted that.
So that's 20 seconds. Very, very long. Now, I'm going to give you some reverb tips along the way. When it comes to vocal reverbs, a very standard reverb time is from 0.8 milliseconds to, I would say, 2.8, 3 milliseconds. Especially if it's a ballad, you can go up to 3.8, 4. I would program the reverb depending on the tempo of the song and making sure that the tail is not clashing with the next phrase. When it's drums, again, I want to go for shorter times, because then my drums are going to become too blurry. They're going to become undefined. Let's play these drums here. So this is more of an arena kind of drum sound, you know, imagine 80s and hair metal bands. This is what it is, but honestly, it's a little bit too long, because you can hear by the time the reverb tail ends, we're already in the next bar. So in this case, I want to go for a shorter one. So in this case, 1.15 seconds is good, it sounds great. And as you can see, I've switched to the full Roomworks reverb. Again, that's a stock plugin in Cubase. And let's talk about some more parameters. Another parameter that you will find in a reverb will be the low level and the high level. This you might also see as a high frequency damping, low frequency damping. Let me show you. See, basically our high end of the reverb lasts for way longer than the low end in this case. If I turn this down, we get more of a reverb tail for the low. The next control that you will find in most algorithmic reverbs is the diffusion. And this actually confuses people sometimes. Diffusion basically controls how quickly the early reflections disperse in the space. So in very simple terms, if you have high diffusion, then you're going to get a more soft, smooth, homogeneous reverb tail, where if you have low diffusion, you're going to listen to these early reflections more distinctively. This sometimes results in a more grainy kind of reverb. Let's have a listen. Hear the difference? So it's a little bit more blended when you have a higher diffusion. And I'm going to show you how it sounds on some other plugins as well. Now, I'm going to talk about the other parameter that we have here, and that's the pre-delay. Basically, what the pre-delay is, it's very simple. You have the vocal or any sound source, and then you have the reverb. When you have zero pre-delay, the reverb is going to start straight away. If you have a little bit of pre-delay, you're going to have the vocal, for example, in this case, and then the reverb will start a little bit later. So this is a great way to create some space in the mix and also to declutter your reverbs and your vocals and anything that you have. Sometimes if you have zero pre-delay, everything can become a little bit blurred, a little bit undefined. So let me show you. I'm going to go over the top. I'm going to go for 200 milliseconds of pre-delay. And let's listen. Let's go all the way up, 500 milliseconds. So it almost sounds like a delay. That's what the pre-delay does. It's pretty simple. Are you following me up to this point? It's not so hard, is it? And it's so worth it to start creating your own reverb presets. I'm telling you, it's a night and day difference if you know how to do this. And your productions and your mixes are going to thank you for it. Now, I brought up another reverb. This is again a Cubase stock plugin. I'm going to go into third-party plugins in a second. And I just brought this up because it has even more features. So as you can see here, we have a room size, we have the time, we can change the room size in this one. This is also something that you will find in some algorithmic reverbs. The room size is a different parameter compared to the main time of the reverb. And here the diffusion is called density. So as you can see, I can go like this, and here you will absolutely hear the difference between low diffusion and high diffusion. So let's listen to this. I'm going to bring it up, and let's listen with low density. Let's listen to only the reverb. So see how much more smooth the reverb becomes when we have the density all the way up. This is pretty much what diffusion does as well. And this reverb also has separate early reflections and tail. So as you can see, we have tail here. Let's listen to just the tail. And now let's listen to just the early reflections. This is another big thing when it comes to reverbs, early reflections. Now the early reflections are the very first reflections that bounce off the surfaces of the walls when you have a sound source playing in a room. So for example, if I sing right here in this room, my voice will bounce on the wall in front of me, then it will bounce back and then back again. So these are the early reflections. These are the very first reflections, and these define the sound of a room in a very big way. Sometimes you have really advanced reverbs like the VSS3 and the VSS4 that I've talked about in previous videos that have the same tail for any of the algorithms, but the main difference is the early reflections algorithm. So you can actually understand how important that is to the sound of a reverb. Let's listen to the early reflections only so that you can hear how early reflections sound like.
A new day, never wanted that.
So, like I said, I'm going to give you tips along the way. Early reflections can really give you a sense of width for your vocals. You can make something extremely wide just by using early reflections. It's a very common trick and I use it all the time. It gives you this really wide effect for vocals and you can't really put your finger on what's going on. Why does it sound so wide? I'm going to use another reverb to show you this, and this is an exceptional reverb. I've talked about this in previous videos. This is Seventh Heaven from Liquid Sonics, and as you can see, we have again our reflections. So these are our early reflections, our pre-delay, our delay, and the tail. You can define this from this drop-down menu. Now, this is not an algorithmic reverb. This is based on impulse responses, so it's a different type of reverb. But as you can see, even this reverb has these familiar controls that I talked about previously. So we have the pre-delay, we have the roll-off, so we can roll off the frequencies to make the reverb a little bit darker. And we also have the frequency-dependent decay time, and I'm going to explain this in a second. So let's play it and let's listen just to the early reflections. I'm going to go, see, I have this slider here, all the way to late, all the way to early. And let's listen to how it sounds.
A new day, never wanted that. A new day.
And you can hear how wide the vocal sounds. You don't really perceive this as reverb, but you perceive this as width, and you get a little bit of depth for your vocal. Now I'm going to add the late reflections as well.
A new day, never wanted that.
Again, like with the very first reverb that I showed you, I can multiply the decay time for the high frequencies or the low frequencies. So I can say, okay, I want my high frequencies to last for longer. I want them to have a longer decay time. I want the reverb to last for longer in the high frequencies. So if I use this multiplier here and I start multiplying, check what happens.
A new day, never wanted that.
Hear that tail? That hiss? This is because we multiply the frequencies and now the decay time just for the high frequencies is way higher. And this is very useful because sometimes you want to have a lower decay for your low frequencies so that your mix doesn't become cluttered with low frequencies in the reverb. And this way you can clean up a reverb really nicely. Again, I'm going to use many different reverbs. This is the FabFilter Pro R, and you will see that again, same principle. We have our reverb time. Here it's called space, but it's really the reverb time. We also have the character here. We also have a stereo width here, as you can see, so we can make the reverb wider or narrower.
A new day, never wanted that.
And this reverb has an EQ right here that you can adjust and you can shape the reverb the way you want to. Very simple. Like I said, if you know one reverb and you know the parameters, you pretty much know every other reverb. Let's take, for instance, this reverb from Relab Development. This is an emulation of the Lexicon 480 reverb. This is quite a complex reverb to operate when it comes to the hardware, but if you pay attention, this is the exact same philosophy. So as you can see here, we have our reverb time, we have a shape for the room. This is unique to this reverb. There are some unique things, you know, but it's only one thing that you need to know for every reverb if they have a special feature like this. Size of the room, how big the room is going to be. This is going to give a different character to the reverb. We can have a high frequency cut to make it darker, and we have a pre-delay, as you can see right here. Pretty simple, and if you know this, you can go to a studio that owns this reverb and you can program this. Beautiful. And again, when we go to the miscellaneous category, you will see that we have our bass multiply, we also have our bass frequency crossover, exactly what I showed you previously in the Seventh Heaven reverb. And we also have the diffusion here. So let's play it, let's see how it sounds.
A new day, never wanted
Let's change the reverb size, for example.
A new day, never wanted to.
So you can see when I have the size in 4 meters, my reverb time doesn't allow me to go over 6 seconds. But if I make it, let's say, 38 meters, I can go up to 63 seconds. I mean, this reverb is really amazing.
A new day.
So if you know how to use a reverb, you can use even one of these vintage classic units that you will find in professional studios. Let's take another reverb. Here I have the very popular Valhalla vintage verb. I've talked about this in a video a while ago. And for this reverb, exactly the same thing. So as you can see, we have the mix here, the pre-delay, the decay time, the damping, the diffusion. And for this reverb, I'm going to start talking about modulation, and I'm also going to talk about the reverb types. So let's play again and let's introduce it.
A new day, never wanted to.
And as you can see here, we have different types. We have chamber, we have bright hall, we have concert hall, we have chorus space, and these are algorithms that are unique to the reverb that you're using. For example, if I go to Revelation, you will see that we also have different early reflection models, for example. So we have hall, chamber, and studio. Or if I go to the Relab Lexicon 480, you will see that we have different reverb types here again. We have hall, plate, twin delays, panorama, random hall, and so on and so forth. So sometimes reverbs have different types, different algorithms inside the reverb that sound really distinct. And the next thing that you want to know for the reverb is that many reverbs have modulation options. Sometimes because algorithmic reverbs can sound a little bit stale, a little bit cold. When you add a little bit of modulation, this usually is a low frequency oscillator, or it's a chorus in the background, or an ensemble effect in the background, or a flanger or a phaser, something like this on top of the reverb. This gives the reverb a little bit more movement. It sounds more organic. It doesn't sound static and fake. So I'm going to show you this on this Valhalla vintage verb, and this is it. This is the modulation section. Let's listen to it.
A new day, never wanted to. A new day, never wanted to.
So basically what you can hear is some pitch modulation going on there. And there are some reverbs that really excel at this. One of the reverbs that I reviewed recently is Glow from Wave Alchemy. It's really amazing what it can do. And I'm going to show you one of the reverbs that I reviewed recently that has beautiful modulation options here. And this is Radiance. This emulates the EMT 140 plate reverb, but still, you will see the same exact controls. Decay time. We have pre-delay, we have our EQ controls here, low and air. We have some more parameters here, of course, but you can watch the video for Radiance if you're interested. But here is the modulation section. So again, if I start adding this,
A new day,
you see it modulates this reverb tail really nicely, and I love the flux mode in this reverb.
a new day, never wanted to.
Now, this not only adds pitch modulation, it also adds some panning modulation. It's very interesting. So as you can see up to this point, these controls are identical or almost identical into every reverb plugin. So if you know what they do, you can program every one of these plugins that you have. So you can start with a preset that you really, really like, but it might be too long or it might be too short. You can just modify the decay time. Maybe you want it to be a little bit brighter. Maybe you want it to be a little bit darker. You can modify the damping. You can dampen the high frequencies and make it darker, or you can dampen the low frequencies and make it a little bit more easy to fit in a mix. Here's Glow, like I said before. Again, this is an emulation of a classic reverb, the RMX 16 reverb. And again, same controls. We have the pre-delay, low, air, the modulation here, we have the different reverb types, and we also have the different algorithms. So in this case, we have a very different sound because we have a non-linear algorithm. This has a very distinct sound. Let's have a listen with these drums. Again, if you're interested, I love this reverb. I have a video, check it out. It's really an amazing reverb. Before I finish this video, I want to say a few things about the most common algorithms. As you can see here, we have whole. Whole algorithms are usually great if you want to place a source into a lush, big space. It's great for vocals if you have a lush big ballad, right? And you want this big sound. If you want to have, let's say, a vocal that's in a pop mix and you want to have a nice reverb, but you don't want a really long reverb that will clutter your mix like a whole, the best choice would be probably a plate reverb. Room algorithms are great for drums, they're great for creating space. In synths, they're great for adding it to sounds like synths or percussion or even vocals if you have a very tight pop mix. Then the non-linear reverbs are a sound of the 80s. Like I said, check out my Glow review and you will see exactly what non-linear reverb sounds like. And there are many different algorithms like ambience, reverse. These are very specific to a reverb plugin, and that's why we have so many reverb plugins, and that's why I have so many reverb plugins and I still get more, because every reverb plugin for me is like a synthesizer. You can never have enough synthesizer because each synthesizer will give you a different sound. And for me, reverbs are true synthesizers. They're sound design tools.
Must be, must be, must be, must be, must be, must be, must be.
I really hope that this video will help you a tiny bit so that you can start creating your own unique personal reverb presets. But not only that, if you have a reverb preset that you really like and you want to modify it and tailor it so that it can fit your own mix, now you will know what parameters to turn, what to tweak in order to make this happen. Down in the description, I'm going to have some suggestions on my favorite reverbs that I use. I've already done many videos. If you want to check them out, feel free to do so. And if this video helped you and you found it useful, don't forget to subscribe, like, maybe use the super thanks button if you feel like it. Check my modern 80s drum kit and my Apollo expansion for Patch Shop. And if you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out this video and this video. See you later. Bye.